Good afternoon, children. I hope all of you are all right. You all are keeping fit. Now we are going to start our next passage of Age of Industrialization. Now we have discussed that two points, how the situation of the weavers were. Now the first was eliminating the existing traders and brokers. The company tried to eliminate the existing traders and brokers connected with the cloth trade. And second point was prevention of company weavers from dealing with the buyers. Now many places, Bengal and Carnatic weavers, they left villages and migrated to different villages. Now they even revolted against the company rule and refused to take loan. Now they lost any chance of bargaining. Many weavers had to lease out their land and devote all their time to weaving. Now came a group of people named Gomustas. Now what they used to do, East India Company started appointing Gomustas, that is paid servant for the British. They used to supervise the weavers, collect their supplies and examine the quality of cloth. In fact, weaving required the labor of the entire family. Now the children and women, all of them in a family were involved in that work. Now the new Gomustas, they had no social links. They did not understand what the one family, how much work they are doing. So what they used to do, if the work is not finished, they used to come with their sepoys and they used to sometimes punish the weavers by beating them with stick if the work is not finished. And further, their weavers used to receive very low prices from the company. So weavers were forcing the Gomustas were forcing the weavers to get whatever amount they have given, that much work they will have to do. They never used to see about their condition. Now how Manchester goods came to India. Now in 1772, Henry Patullo, an official of the East Indian Company, said that the demand for Indian textile could never reduce. Why? Because I have already explained before, because of their finer quality, and it was handmade. In 1811 to 1812, share of cotton textile industry was 33% of India's export, and it was just in 1850 to 51, it was just 3%, only 3%. In the 19th century, textile industry in England developed. So the industries pressurized the government to impose import duties on cotton textile, so that Manchester goods could sell in Britain without facing any competition. At the same time, industrialists persuaded the East India Clinic Company to sell British manufacturers in the Indian market. At the end of 18th century, there had been virtually no import on cotton piece into India, but in 1870, cotton import from England was over 50% of the value of Indian imports. I think Anurag had some question about this. You listen to it. If you could not understand, you can again ask me in the next class. Now there were another community of weavers. It was coasties. Now who are coasties? Like the weavers in the finer kinds of cloth they used to weave in other parts of India had fallen upon, they had very bad time because their goods were not selling. So they were unable to compete with the showy, the manufactured goods were, Manchester goods were very showy things. Sent in such abundance, so they migrated to Bedford in order to obtain wages. Now, problem faced by Indian weavers. What were the problems? Number one, that export market collapsed because they were getting all Manchester made goods. Sometimes on those goods, it was a label given with Indian god goddesses so that the people of India will buy those things. Now, number two, the local market was flooded with Manchester goods, and these imported cotton goods were so cheap. It was very cheap because it was machine made, and so that Indian weavers could not easily compete with them. Now, by the 1860, Indian weavers faced another new problem. What was that? American Civil War broke out and cotton supplies from US was stopped as Britain turned to India. As cotton exports from India increased, the price of raw cotton increased. Weavers in India did not get sufficient cotton and they were forced to buy raw cotton at high prices. Now slowly factories came up. Cotton and jute mills were the first to be established in India. Now the first cotton mill was set up in 1854 in Bombay and the first jute mill set up in 1855 in Bengal. Now till 1862, 4 mills were set up in 94,000 spindles and 22,160 looms. In North India, the Elgin mill was started in Kanpur in the 1860s and a year later the first cotton mill of Ahmedabad was set up by 1874. The first spinning and weaving mill of Madras began production. Most of these industries were set up by Indian entrepreneurs. Now, who were the early entrepreneurs? From the late 18th century, the British in India began exporting opium to China and took tea from China to England. Now, many Indian businessmen became junior players in this trade. They became junior in this trade. Now, they provided finance and procured supplies and shipping consignments. Now, some of them had vision to develop industrial enterprises in India. Now, some famous industrialists of that time in 19th century were Rabindranath Tagore, now Din Shah Petit, Jamshedji Tata, now Shiv Narayan Birla, and Seth Hukumchand, etc. Now, Rabindranath Tagore set up 6 joint stock companies in 1830 and 1840. Tata set up first iron and steel works in India, Jamshedpur in 1912. We must remember the years. Now, Seth Hukumchand set up the first Indian jute mill in Calcutta, 1917. Some merchants from Madras traded with Burma, while others had linked with Middle East and East Africa. Now, colonial limitation over Indian merchants. As colonial power gained control over Indian trade, the scope of business for Indian merchants became limited. Now, they were not allowed to trade with Europe in manufacturing goods. They were allowed to export only raw material and food grains like cotton, opium, wheat, indigo, which were required by the British Indian merchants, even thrown out of shipping business. Now, till the First World War, European managing agencies controlled a large sector of Indian industry. Some of them are Bird, Hegglers and Company, Andrew Yule and Jardine, Skinner and Company. Indian businessmen, they were not even allowed to join in the chambers of commerce of Europeans. Now, migration of workers in search of jobs. That is a very great problem even today also. Now, with the expansion of factories, the demand for workers increased. In 1901, they were 5 lakhs 84,000 workers in the Indian factory. By 1946, the number was 24 lakh 36,000. In most industrial regions, workers came from the districts around. Now, peasants and artisans who found no work in the village went to the industrial centers in search of work. Over 50% workers in the Bombay cotton industries in 1911 came from the neighboring district of Ratnagiri. The mills of Kanpur got most of their workers from the villages within the district of Kanpur. Now, most often mill workers moved between the city and their native place during harvest and festival. As they were seasonal workers, you must have read in the economics. Now, as news of employment spread, workers traveled great distances in the hope of work in the mills from the United Provinces. They even went to work in Bombay or Calcutta. Okay, only this much for the day. Now, you read properly and try to understand and sort out the questions also, whatever you have in your NCERT books. Okay, then keep well, and this is all for today.